welcome to our Christmas celebration. Should have asked that everybody wear special Christmas hats, maybe. That would made it even better. On the program, not a complicated program this afternoon. Should be fun to be together. I'm glad to see some of our newer members and older members together with us this afternoon. Really great to see you. First, we'll have a short time of meditation and hear the real story of Christmas from Chaplain Michelle Depooter, who will read from Luke chapter 2, a short meditation from Deacon Paul. Then I'd like to go over a little bit, a year in review, just to see sort of where we've been this last year. And then I'm very happy to say we have on the line with us all the way from France, David Reid, who will tell us about his new book, Ship and Shore, which has been published by NAMMA. And all of you will be getting this in your stockings for Christmas if you haven't already received it. And then after that, just time to introduce yourselves and get to know each other and say some words of encouragement, and you'll be on your way for the Christmas season. So I'd like to invite now Chaplain Michelle Depooter to read part of the Christmas story here in Luke chapter 2. Go ahead, Michelle.
Luke 2, starting at verse 8. And there were shepherds living out in the fields nearby, keeping watch over their flocks at night. An angel of the Lord appeared to them, and the glory of the Lord shone around them, and they were terrified. But the angel said to them, "Do not be afraid. I bring you good news that will cause great joy for all the people. Today in the town of David, a Savior has been born to you. He is the Messiah, the Lord. This will be a sign to you. You will find a baby wrapped in cloths and lying in a manger." Suddenly, a great company of the heavenly host appeared with the angel, praising God and saying, "Glory to God in the highest heaven, and on earth peace to those on whom his favor rests." When the angels had left them and gone into heaven, the shepherds said to one another, "Let's go to Bethlehem and see this thing that has happened, which the Lord has told us about."
Thank you very much, Michelle, for that reading. Now I invite Deacon Paul to do a meditation, but I thought it might be nice to not just do this any old place, but let's cozy up in front of the fire and hear Paul's meditation now as we are all together as friends and family in this meeting. Go ahead, Deacon Paul. You have to unmute yourself.
If I had a glass of wine, it would be even better right now in front of the fire. So we just heard Michelle read us St. Luke's familiar and very beautiful description of the first announcement of the good news as the angel tells the shepherds about the birth of our dear Savior, the baby Jesus, meek and mild, wrapped in cloths and lying in a manger. And as I reflected on this message, I realized that it contains one of the most important messages in the entire New Testament. I know that everything that we find in Scripture is important, but this one message strikes me as being particularly important now. It's just 4 little words with a very powerful message. Do not be afraid. It's such an important message that it appears 15 times in the 4 Gospels. 5 of those times, including the one we hear today, it is spoken by an angel. Earlier in Luke's infancy narrative, an angel tells Zechariah not to be afraid as he announces Elizabeth's pregnancy with John the Baptist. And we know the angel Gabriel says it to Mary at the Annunciation, telling her, "Do not be afraid, Mary, for you have found favor with God." Later, an angel appears to Joseph in a dream, telling him not to be afraid, that he should not go through with his plan to divorce Mary. And still later, much later, at the very end of Matthew's gospel, after Jesus's resurrection, an angel appears to Mary Magdalene and the other Mary outside Jesus' tomb, telling them not to be afraid, that Jesus has risen from the dead. It's such an important message that Jesus himself says, do not be afraid, over and over and over again in the Gospels. He says it to Simon, James, and John as he calls them to be his disciples. He says it as he walks across the water to the disciples while they are being tossed about in the boat on the Sea of Galilee. He says it again to Peter, James, and John at the Transfiguration. And he says it as he sends out his disciples as sheep among wolves. And he tells it to them again at the Last Supper. He says it to Jairus when he comes to Jesus, begging him to cure his daughter. And finally, Jesus himself says it to Mary Magdalene and the other Mary when he appears to them in the garden after his resurrection, telling them to go to the disciples with the great news that he has risen from the dead. Jesus's entire earthly life, from beginning to end, echoes with these words, do not be afraid. It was very important back then that the people he talked to knew that he would be with them. And it's important to us now too, as he says it to us. We live in unsettled times. Storms, both natural and man-made, buffet us each and every day. We deal with a pandemic that drags on and on and on, even though Jason said he will vote to have it stop at the end of this year. We deal with social upheaval and division, with scandals in government, in industry, in our schools, and in the church, with environmental decay and degradation. There is much that can cause us to fear for ourselves, our families, our countries, and our world. But Jesus's words are true today, just as they were 2,000 years ago. Do not be afraid, he tells us, for I am with you until the end of the age. And if we trust in his words, we will have the courage to face all of the uncertainties in our lives, just as Mary and Joseph did, just as Elizabeth and Zechariah did, just as the disciples and Mary Magdalene and Jairus and all the others who heard him speak these words 2,000 years ago did. And if we can do that, we will all be blessed as they are blessed. We too will see the fulfillment of God's promise to redeem his people, and all our fears will fade away as we live in his presence forever. My friends, may Christ's peace be with you and your families this day and always. I wish you a blessed Christmas and a healthy and peaceful new year. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Deacon Paul, for those words of encouragement. Well, friends, I'd like to go through a top 10 list at this time after listening to Deacon Paul's updates. Top 10 things that marked this year, both for NAMMA, for perhaps all of us collectively, but certainly in NAMMA's work. And I find it's useful to think about what's gone in the past to chart the course for what we're going to do in the future. The first thing in 2021 that I note is that this was a year where shipping was in the headlines. For so many years, we've talked about sea blindness. And this year, perhaps there still is sea blindness, but certainly shipping has come to the fore. First, a big green ship, the Ever Given of the Evergreen Lines, was stuck in the Suez Canal back in March. It created a flurry of memes and made one backhoe driver internet famous as he tried to dig the ship out. This certainly put shipping on the headlines. In more recent months, the challenge of getting ships into Los Angeles Long Beach has indeed made headlines, and the arcane business of the logistics chain and the supply chain have become things that lots of people are talking about. This is the cover of the New Yorker from December 6th, just a few short days ago. Going from sea blindness to being the talk of the town certainly was an important part of 2021. But bringing it more close to home, you were in the headlines. There is no doubt that 2021 will go down as a year where you all became much better known in the headlines. Almost every single NAMMA ministry and many of the rest of the ones worldwide in the ICMA network made local headlines, made national headlines, even made international headlines. I note articles in the New York Times, Wall Street Journal, Washington Post, Catholic Review, Waterways Journal, The News, the American Journal of Transportation, the Oracle, New Haven Register, Tradewinds, Seattle Times, Spectrum News One, Boston Globe, Maritime Executive, Newsy, Bloomberg News, I think 3 or 4 or 5 times. IMO website, Sea Trade Maritime News, CBC, Globe and Mail, Global News, Hamilton Spectator, and many more besides had significant news stories about your work. To me, this is an incredible mark of 2021, either because it means that people are paying attention to seafarers' welfare, or because there was such important news to be shared. This is no doubt an important part of our work in 2021, that so many of you were once, twice, thrice, and more in major news stories. Here's one from the Wall Street Journal, Chaplain Cora DiDomenico from the Seamen's Church Institute, and another in Tradewinds on crew jabs at Walmart, which leads to the third of the big stories that marked 2021, vaccines for seafarers. This was collectively and individually our largest project in the year. There are now on the NAMMA list 88 locations where seafarers, foreign seafarers, can get vaccinations. We've charted more than 65,000 seafarers who have gotten vaccinations in the United States. Across 16 locations in Canada, now more than 3,300 seafarers have received vaccinations in Canada. The NAMMA website, the pages dealing with vaccinations have been viewed more than 20,000 times. I had the privilege to sit on the International Chamber of Shipping's COVID-19 vaccine working group every Thursday morning at 5 a.m. Eastern time for almost the entirety of the year, every single week. This will be the last one. I think it's almost the 50th meeting of that group this year. And NAMMA, along with many of you, signed the Neptune Declaration on crew change and seafarers' welfare. That declaration was made almost at the beginning of the year and continues to be updated with a crew change indicator, which talks about crew change and vaccinations. Very unfortunately, that it was going rather well for a few months, but now with the Omicron variant, crew change in many parts of the world again is becoming very challenging. So how did we do it sort of day to day? One of the big parts of our work in 2021, as it was in 2020, was online meetings. This is the beautiful group at our NAMMA conference 2021. But I note we also had many different regional Zoom calls, many other special topics Zoom calls. The Canadians were very active on the Canada Seafarers Welfare Board, which met every 6 weeks, plus a number of additional meetings besides. And then there were other calls. There was a US COVID vaccination working group that NAMMA helped chair, and a number of other calls. Zoom has become just part of our daily life and daily work in ways that we could have perhaps not quite imagined 2 years ago, for sure. A key part of our work is the continued partnership with ICMA, which continues for the next 2 years. We've signed an agreement to continue that. That gives us access to more students coming to the Houston School from abroad. That gives us access to being part of a worldwide network and worldwide conferences. Back in June, a number of NAMMA members participated in an ICMA meeting alongside of the Crew Connect Europe meeting in June 21-22, and it was great to have lots of NAMMA participation there as well. It has been fantastic to have very deep and important partnerships with a number of other worldwide foundations and groups, including the TK Foundation, the Mission to Seafarers, the Diocese of Victoria in Texas, the Port Welfare Partnership Project, the SIU of the United States, the West Gulf Maritime Association, and the ITF Seafarers Trust. Of note, we've received significant new grants from the ITF Seafarers Trust, from the mission to Seafarers, and especially the TK Foundation, who has extended to us a 3-year grant to help us boost our staff at NAMMA coming the next 3 years. These partnerships are so incredibly important day to day for our work, and hopefully they pay off in value for our memberships. 7, publications. We're going to hear about another one in just a few moments, but our key publications continue to be our print and online journal, the Murray Report. You can go to murrayreport.namma.org. I'm always looking for new content, so if any of you would like to be writers, that would be wonderful. Kevin Walker, one of our staff members, Susan Hupert, another staff member, both on the call today, are both very active in the Murray Report. I thank them both for their writing and editorial comment. If any of you would like to write for the Murray Report, Kevin has a big red pen, and he is good at editing texts. So never fear if you would like to submit something. We would love to be able to consider it and put it on our publication list. A key part of our work in publications, but also research, has been work in Canada. We were NAMMA was commissioned by the Canadian Council of Catholic Bishops to write a report detailing seafarers' welfare in the country. With Kevin and others, we wrote that report in May 2021 and have updated it to a much larger report just published this week for the Canada National Seafarers Welfare Board. The original report for the Canadian Catholic Bishops Council was commissioned by Archbishop Brian Dunn of Halifax. The second report is done in conjunction and funded with the Ocean Frontier Research Institute of Memorial University of Newfoundland, and has been presented officially to the Canadian National Seafarers Welfare Board this past Thursday. The best part of my job, however, is talking to you. I love praying with you, talking with you, speaking with, calling you up. I note frequent calls with Marshall Bundren, who is on the call. I love speaking to him. He's a great encouragement for me. But for all of you, the spending time with you one-on-one has been the real joy of this year and in past years. And I put online a few weeks ago my collection of mugs. This is my the only thing I collect rather. And the key thing in this is that every morning I get to spend some time with you. When I drink my coffee, I am reminded of visits to you and spending time with you, and it allows me to travel around the world every day. I truly enjoy seeing those different logos every day and enjoying spending time with you. Last but not least, we could finally start to plan for a next year of in-person meetings. I note that we've already started significant planning for the Houston School in person in February 2022, the Lord willing, which will coincide also with the NAMMA in-person board meeting from February 16th to 18th, also in Houston in February 2022. We are at this time rewriting and refilming the shipwelfarevisitor.com course. Kevin and Noah Leon, our other videographer, are deeply involved in that, working in partnership with the Merchant Navy Welfare Board. We've produced a number of new courses on maritraining.com. Those are all available for you and for your staff. Most of them are free, and I would encourage you to encourage your board members and staff members to use them. They're all free and they're there for you. Also, our NAMMA conference will be scheduled in Baltimore at the MyTags facility from August 9th to 11th, 2022. You are all very welcome to attend. And again, it's not just for NAMMA members, but any of your board members or staff members or volunteers who would like to come and register are very welcome to do so. Finally, we're starting to think ahead for new staff members, augmenting our staff members, especially with the funding from the TK Foundation in the first quarter of 2022. These are 10 different programs or 10 different movements that have affected our work in 2022. I would be interested a bit later to hear from you about ones that maybe I missed or things in that list that especially were important for you. But just before we have that open conversation, we have one very special guest, David Reid, who has published a book called Ship and Shore: An Insider Explains the Maritime World. NAMMA published this book in this past month. We have sent copies in the mail to all of you. Some of you might have already received it, those in Canada. Those in US, I think maybe things are just a bit slower, maybe. No, maybe who knows when things will arrive in different places. But it's a lovely book, if I may say so myself. And I'd like to hear from David Reid a bit more about it. Of note, David Reid has a very long history in the maritime world. He's worked on ships, he's worked ashore, and he's worked as a chaplain, most recently at the Seamen's Church Institute of Philadelphia and South Jersey. So he touches all the areas of maritime from all the angles of maritime. He knows how to speak to the insiders and to the outsiders. And so his book is based on his long history inside and out and should be useful for you. But it's especially written for new chaplains, ship visitors, staff, volunteers. It's a great gift for board members. It's a great gift for future supporters. And we hope that it can be useful. If you want to order more than one copy, contact me and I can give you a special deal. Maybe we can even figure out some auto pen where David can virtually sign things. He's based actually in France right now. David, can you tell us a bit about the book and a bit about why you wrote the book?
Absolutely. But before I do that, I want to share with everybody that this book would not have happened had it not been for Jason. Jason, you are the reason. You challenged me to do this, and so I want to give credit to the fact that you gave me the challenge, and I was happy to accept. I also want to thank Kevin, because during the process of my writing, it was Kevin that worked side by side with me, editing, reviewing, proofing, and organizing the layout of the book. Yes, I did the writing, but it was a team effort, and it was really a great pleasure to do this with NAMMA. Because my hope is that this book will benefit NAMMA and all the 55 seafarer missions that are underneath that umbrella. So the book, during my time in Philadelphia, I was involved in training volunteers for ship visiting, and that experience made it very clear to me that people who step up to volunteer they have a thirst for information. They want to know more. And so every time I'd hold these training classes, that typically would be 3 to 4 hours, the dialogue would continue and the questions would come up, and there was just a real, what about this and what about that and how does that work? So part of what I was trying to address in the book is to give people a resource that they could, when they need to know more detail, they've got something to go to get an understanding. The other part of my work, working in Philadelphia, was I would go out to some of the churches that supported the work of the Philadelphia Seafarer Mission. And much like I'm sure you have in all of your own parishes and jurisdictions. And again, when I would show up at one of the churches and meet with the congregation after the service, I'd give a little talk about what seafarer missions do and the life of a seafarer. And it was pretty amazing the interest and the questions that would come up, not only in the talk, and but even afterwards, people would be coming up and saying, "Can you explain this? And why is this? And why does that happen?" And so on. So again, my thinking is that The book is potentially a resource that when when you're going out to your support groups and your donors, potentially the book can be something that you can take along, and hopefully there'll be a way to make this possible that the books can be made available. That they'll be able to get the book and then get a deeper and richer understanding of everything that goes on. The other thing that I think is important is that, and I think it comes out in, I was making a note of your 10 highlights of the year, and all of that it brings together the whole business of connecting and understanding and requiring the ability to comprehend the life of a seafarer. And it's not just the life of the seafarer, it's also all the other bits and pieces that go along with the shipping industry. You talked about, the fact that people are much more savvy or interested now in, what's this global supply chain, and why are these 90 ships or so sitting outside Long Beach and Los Angeles? And like many of you, I've heard some silly conversations on the news when people are being interviewed who really don't know anything about shipping, and they say some of the most bizarre things. And I heard somebody on a West Coast TV station being interviewed, and they said, yeah, these ships just turn up and they don't even tell anybody they're coming. And, and it's just bizarre stuff. So the other idea, or, that what I hope we'll achieve is that with this book, the book is in 2 parts. The first part is about the life on board. So it's really about, the life of a seafarer and the many bits and pieces that go with it. And then the second part is about the shipping industry itself. Now, having said all of that, there are 22 chapters. There are many other parts of the shipping industry that weren't covered in the book. And so who knows, maybe there'll be a sequel. But I can tell you that I was fortunate that I had some of the first editions of the book off the press, and they arrived here in France with the local postman, and I've been giving them to some of my French friends here, and it's pretty amazing the reaction. I mean, people who are even don't have any particular knowledge of seafarers or shipping. It's amazing how intrigued they are, and perhaps it's because of what you said, Jason, that this kind of these stories are out in the news more in the last year. And so I know that there are people reading this book in Ohio. There are people reading it in England. There are people reading it in France. There are people reading it in New Zealand. And these are just some of the people I know. So I hope we can get it out there. For those people who prefer audiobooks, we're currently working on the audiobook version, and I'm busy doing the narration. I'm about halfway along at the moment, so stay tuned. That may be coming soon, so you'll be able to tune in and listen while you're driving. So that's really sums it up. It was a pleasure to do this project. I'm one of my goals in life